I was thinking today about spherical tuning on our sides or single speakers, and why the spherical seems to work better at creating the image than, say, the B-line method where we made a grid. And the center for this after you did left to right was not as good. Same can be said for all of the other techniques that we tried, like center line, and we also did Alpine's all of cabin. I even did half cabin, tried it for both sides. Centering was still not as good as spherical. And a related answer came up, which was also due to the fact that I tried medium size sphere on this side, and we should try the long side because that one was furthest from us, which is giving credence to the fact that the position of the listener is still some valid question, and that did not image as well as two spheres of the same radius, even though the person is sitting here. The two radius works better if the radiuses of the spheres are the same. So it got me thinking, what is the common denominator of the two spheres? And that's the radius. And that is the distance from the source is constant. So R1 over here equals R2 over here. They're the same. And for this particular part of the scan, if you can imagine that, just say you could break down that sphere scan into 1,000 parts, this would be part number 500. And over here it's part number 500. They're very different. This microphone is actually not just measuring the source, this microphone is also measuring the bounce off that window, the bounce off that door, the bounce off this chair, the bounce off the roof, and the distant bounces from everywhere in the car. And at the same time, this one's not just measuring that to there, it's measuring everything to everywhere. So mics are basically omnidirectional. Doesn't matter what sort you get or where you point it. It'll vary slightly, but you're getting a reading of everything versus R1 or R2. So I'll just get point number, this is still on the sphere, point number 221. It's still got the same R factor, but a different set of reflections. So that, averaged out 1,000 times, always has this. It's always measuring that distance. And it's always measuring, 1,000 different reflections that are always different. So if you move to position number 222, the reflections are effing very different. From, just 2 centimeter movement or 1 centimeter movement, the reflection energy is different because that microphone capsule does not know what direction you're interested in. So by keeping the sphere, you're averaging out the randomness. The randomness is getting diluted into soup, into a constant background. So that's why a fixed radius to any point in your scan is the common denominator. And it helps the average of the spectra you're capturing to tell you more about this than this. So that's why the sphere worked and B-line didn't work, because in B-line, point number 200 over here, point number 115 and point number 116 had different R values. This R is shorter than that R because it was getting further away to the speaker group or source or whatever. So you couldn't, the noise wasn't getting filtered out as much. I mean, it was pretty good. It beats waving around your head method, but it wasn't as good as spherical method. And that's the reason also why the short R over here and the long R over here, because we're trying to be smart, we're trying to be tricky. It was almost 2.5 times longer than this R when I measured it. And we're trying to get tricky. So the ratio of direct to room, that includes inner room, which gets averaged to a background constant. Here it was like, 60 centimeters versus, 2.5, 3 meters. And over here, it was 2.5 meters versus 2.5 meters. So there wasn't enough this in the equation to have a same description of a speaker in a space. The microphone cannot duplicate what we hear. So I was going to say the title of this video might be, if microphones could show us how we hear or what we hear, there'd be no point for this video. And something like that. So the paradigm used to be, measure from where you're going to listen, because we can measure how we listen and it should all fix itself. But the paradigm shift is, it's not the position of the person that just prescribes the correction, it's the position of the speaker in the space that dictates the sound of the speaker. So this speaker is going to sound slightly different to this speaker because of the instrument cluster, because of the steering wheel, because of the distance from the seat to the thing, this one's, got a bit different stuff in its way. And if you're into DIY speaker modding in cars, your mods might be not quite symmetrical and all that sort of stuff. And the stuffing behind it, there might be different amounts of electronics behind that speaker and all that sort of jazz. So if you didn't EQ your car and you had stock locations and just set your time alignment, you'd be pretty much having an okay center. But you'd still have to, this is where I believe people are doing more wrong than right. So they start to say, well, I want to EQ that speaker, so the response I'm getting is this, but I want the response to be this. And this one, they go, the response is like this, and I want it to be like this. And so they stick the mic here, and what they don't realize is that when they're trying to get that, they're changing this one in a way different way they're changing that one. Whereas you just go and use spherical technique, you could iron out the universal sound of that. This speaker in this geometry has, say, a hump, and you do spherical and you go, well, I'm going to fix that hump and whatever this side of the car has to offer, and then I'm going to fix the hump on this speaker to this and whatever this side of the car has to offer, right? So which might only be like 2 or 3 dB different, just due to the geometry. And then those, when time aligned to the listener, would sound better than if you put a mic here. also going to say that one day I'm going to get to trying out a different R. So I'm going to do like 3 different R's. I'm going to do a pretty short and sharp R, and I'm going to have to do different ones for different speakers. And then I'm going to do a medium R, like so, and a longer R, but all in stereo for science and for you guys, and also for me. And maybe one of these 3 lengths, I don't know why I picked 3, maybe one of these 3 lengths will give me a better stage. So there's still a lot of work to come. So currently I'm using like a mid. Interestingly enough, they don't seem to ever overlap when I'm doing I just chose my face to the first group. So there was me. I chose my face as first group, and it just so happened to be about yay big, and I did yay big on the other side. So that was the spheres that I did to get the sound that I've got right now. So yeah, bit of a break from practical tuning and changing a few amps around, but I'm going to get back to the actual nuts and bolts, see if I can hear any more focus. And when I'm in here, I'm also going to be doing FIR versus IIR per driver to see whether there's any intrinsic phase shifting that needs addressing, because at the moment I'm just using pure FIR linear phase, which does not change the phase, and I'm relying on that first flight time to be, bang on for each side. And I don't believe that you could ever find a correction that somehow undoes damaging phase if you're not even measuring the speakers right in the first place. Like if you're measuring from here and you're receiving energy from everywhere into the mic capsule, how can you correct this flight's phase if there's sound coming from everywhere into the microphone? Delayed sound. And I've got phase, the illusion of knowing. There's a couple of those if you want to watch them. Alright, over and out. See how this one rolls.